Skip has Ginobili as the third most important player in this series. Stephen A., you had him all the way down at 6.
I stand by that.
After watching last night, do you stand by
Absolutely.
that? Haven't changed your mind?
Absolutely. It's a matter of fact, last night made it that much more obvious that I was right.
Wow.
Because
how are you going to talk your way out of this one?
if you listen and
I'm all ears, man.
I'm more willing to more than willing to educate you. It was one game. Manu Ginobili did nothing other than what we should have expected. Manu Ginobili comes through in big games. Yeah. You said on the record that the playoffs didn't start until last night for the San Antonio Spurs and the Oklahoma City Thunder. So the point that I'm trying to make to you is that, okay, for the first time, he didn't really have to worry about much against Utah, didn't really have to worry about much against the Clippers. He averaged 23.3 minutes per game during the regular season. Popovich was saving him because, remember, he got injured the last game of the regular season last year, which you say was a big reason, and nobody can deny why San Antonio was eliminated in the first round against Memphis. Yep. So we've seen this is a champion. We've seen what Manu Ginobili can do. And so it's one game. Tony Parker had a modest game, not a bad game, a modest game. Yeah. Tim Duncan, 16 points, 11 rebounds, modest game. One of the big three always steps up. That's number one. Number two, the question in terms of the top six was pertaining to value, meaning if you don't show up, what's the chances of you winning if that person didn't show up? We both had
That wasn't the question.
Yes, it was.
Just who's most valuable in order.
In other words, we were talking about who's most valuable in order because you're talking about order of importance. Valuable. That's the word, valuable. Tim Duncan clearly is number one. Kevin Durant, 0 for 2 in the fourth quarter. We saw what happened. Russell Westbrook struggling. We saw what happened, okay? Tony Parker, modest game, but keeping things under control, even though they was a turnover machine in the first half. All of those things came into play. We didn't talk about who can play, who was most reliable in the clutch. What we said was who's most valuable. If Manu Ginobili, I guarantee you, if Manu Ginobili hadn't stepped up, Tony Parker would have. Tim Duncan would have.
I completely disagree with
But I'm just telling you.
They don't win without Ginobili last night.
I'm just saying, no, I'm talking about last night. I said if Ginobili didn't show up last night, one of the big three always does. The question with the Oklahoma City Thunder is, will any of them really show up when it counts? And the fact is, yesterday, they didn't. That's why they led my list against Ginobili. Because, again, Duncan, you're not going anywhere without Duncan. You're not going anywhere without Duncan. And with Durant and Westbrook, you need them to do what they did. That's where it came from.
Right. So you're saying Russell Westbrook is more valuable than Manu Ginobili?
Because I'm saying to you that the Spurs can win normally. Last night it wouldn't have happened.
Last night
the Spurs, of course not last night. We're not talking about last night. The question was asked before the series. I'm telling you, the San Antonio Spurs, by virtue of his 23 minutes that he averaged this year, a relatively modest year that he's had this season. Didn't play in but 34 games. That's it. The point is they still were the number one seed in that Western Conference. Why? But you don't get to that point if you're Oklahoma City as a number 2 seed without Westbrook, without Durant. You can't do it without them. But you could do it without Ginobili.
Okay, who looked more valuable to you last night? That's the
Ginobili.
question. Yeah. Then Westbrook, then Harden, who I put at the bottom of my list. I went Harden 5, Westbrook 6. And I'm right about this. I put Ginobili at 3. And again, on Friday on Twitter, I got killed. Thousands of responses saying I was completely out of my mind, that Ginobili didn't belong in the top 6 in this series.
People don't make any sense.
Well, I'm just saying, because he hadn't done anything remotely like this throughout the entire regular season, in which he played about half the games. He played in 0 games against the Thunder, and the Spurs still won 2 out of 3. But now that it's money time, as I told you, when it's crunch time, this team goes only as he goes. You can make a case he's even more valuable than Tim Duncan is in clutch time, in money time. When Coach Pop said in the now famous before fourth quarter speech, and when he said we need a little more nasty, what he really meant to say was, we need a little more Ginobili. That's what he needed, because Ginobili had already done this in the first quarter of this game against the Thunder, and he picked it right back up when he went back in the game in the fourth quarter, and you have to admit, he just took it over. Harden could not deal with him. Harden can really bother Kobe at this stage of Kobe's career. He cannot bother Ginobili. Ginobili took him to school.
It's like the sport of boxing when you're fighting a southpaw as opposed to a conventional right-handed hitter. It's a bit more difficult because they were a
Harden's
bit more
left-handed
orthodox.
too.
I understand that, but he usually doesn't have to defend it.
Right.
That's the difference.
Everything's unorthodox.
Ginobili's unorthodox. He's gutsy. He can take you inside. He can take you outside. He's smart. He's strong. He knows how to draw fouls. All of those things are valid. So those people that were criticizing you, they haven't been paying attention. Not to mention the fact that when you look at the San Antonio Spurs, again, Ginobili was being saved. Tim Duncan, by and large, was being saved. The only person who had a green light was the guy that was in Popovich's face weeks ago saying, I'm 29, I haven't played in 3 days.
Yep.
And that was Tony Parker.
Yep.
That's it. Everybody else has been protected and guarded. All the veterans, meaning the big two, and Ginobili and Tim Duncan,
the first time since '07 that Manu has been this healthy and this fresh at this point in the season.
That's true.
And I've told you, every night that he plays, when he really turns it on, he will do at least one thing that makes you say, wow, I don't know if I've quite seen that before.
But again,
he did about 3 of those things last
But again, the Spurs are such a complete package. There's no reason. I'm not trying to downgrade Ginobili in any way. I'm just highlighting the fact that the Spurs are such a complete package that you have other guys that are just as valuable as him because of what they're capable of delivering and how Popovich utilizes them.
Yep.
Whereas with Oklahoma City, you can't sit here, question their coaching or question the coaching of a Westbrook, look at Westbrook and some of the mistakes that he makes, et cetera, and then sit there and tell me that these guys are not more valuable, because if they don't do what they're supposed to do, Oklahoma City has no chance. But if Ginobili, for some reason, doesn't come through in the clutch, the Spurs have shown us time and again there's someone else who will, and that's the point.